Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the high school meeting for November. We're going to focus mostly today on the access test, but we will have a couple other things we want to touch base on as well as we move through this morning's meeting. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we will all right. So anyways, want to get going. So the agenda for today is we're going to just touch base on, again, resources, but I want to give you updates on where the pre-ACT secure test is at, where that information is. That was a conversation point last time, but I want to bring you up to date on that. Also, the civics test, some brief changes in that. We're going to just touch base on the climate survey, access. We're going to spend most of our time on, we'll touch briefly on Apple, the optional winter screeners, and then just a reminder about ACT accommodation. So a lot of different topics, but really the greatest time is going to be spent on access. A reminder that our website is easily accessible at mmsd.org/assessment, and we put a lot of information there. We continue to update it, and sometimes it's not as updated as I'd like. Let me know if you find something that needs to be taken care of, and I will continue to work on that. Thanks, Sarah, for the agenda. Also, as we move into the upcoming assessment window for access, which is going to be mostly the uppermost on everyone's mind, please keep in mind that we do have, as a department, we have office hours every Monday from 2 to 3. So one or both of us, Sarah and I, plus the rest of the assessment and learning supports team, will be available during that time. So if you have questions, concerns, if you want just a little bit of one-on-one time, that would be great. Let us know. And the Zoom link is here. It's also in the agenda. Okay, briefly touching on the pre-ACT secure. Last time we made a recommendation. I just want to make sure that you understand that the decision was finalized by the the associate superintendents for Wednesday, April 5th. This is the day later than what we had originally started talking about, mostly because the 4th of April is election day. And since we have polling places at all of our high schools, that was the critical kind of what flipped the day to Wednesday. So this will be a 9th and 10th grade day only for the pre-ACT secure. Keep in mind that we also have the forward test for grade 10 students. They will be doing the social studies section. So that might be a great day to knock that out as well. Maybe not, maybe you've got other plans, but keep in mind that that is a possibility. Again, the pre-ACT secure is only about 2.5 hours long. So that should be done mostly, probably we'll get it done mostly in the morning. Can't imagine going too late in the afternoon. So that provides you some opportunities for the afternoon if that's what you so choose. Let's see. Yes, we can send out so Katie, good question. We can send out an invite to those office hours. They are not mandatory anything, but I'll send you an invite for one of those, and then you can put more on your calendar. If you want them all on your calendar, we can certainly do that too. I don't think you do, but okay. We had a busy day yesterday. And because of the election and because of what offices were up for re-election, we wanted to make sure that our civics test was accurate. So yesterday it was closed. So meaning we basically paused it. We're still in the process of determining when we're going to reopen it. So if there were no contested races, we would be reopening on Monday, next Monday. So we'll go in and change the questions to make sure that the correct answers are available. If there are contested races, which there might be, the test will be reopened when that is settled legally. So that might be a little while yet. We don't know. So we'll continue to watch what happens with the results from yesterday's election, and then apply those results to the high school civics test. And we'll email all the department chairs, as well as you, the associate superintendents, and anyone involved with assessment and the civics test when that reopens. Okay. Now, the heart of the matter for today, access for ELLs assessment. Once again, I want to remind you that this is a state and federal requirement. It is actually along the lines of a civil rights requirement for English learners. It provides us a lot of information on progress towards English language acquisition. So it is a critical assessment. Also want to know that things are in motion already, as you can imagine. The responses to the rosters, Sarah sent you rosters. So in that roster was who is expected to be tested and who has accommodations based on what was in OASIS. It appears as though the OASIS data pool everything was pretty much up to date. You should have very few, if any, students who have changes in accommodations, but you might. So those were supposed to have been made and gotten back to Sarah by yesterday. And so the reason is that once the students are in the system, Sarah has time to go in and set up those students for those accommodations. You should have access to the AMS system. If you don't, please email us and we'll get you all set up so that you're able to do the things that I'm going to share in just a moment. Also, just a reminder, some more of the details of how this all flows. Material will arrive in the district on the 28th of November, which is always kind of really pushing close to the time when our December window opens, December 1st. So what will happen is all that material arrives at Flom Road. We, meaning our assessment team, descend upon Flom Road and make sure that the material is there and get it on the correct bins and sorted so that you get your materials. The materials themselves, at high school, you typically will receive less than at the other levels, but you still will receive the administrative manuals. If there are any writing test booklets that we already deem that you need, you might get a couple of those. But the alternate access is also one of those pieces that will be either arriving on the 28th or shortly thereafter. So we'll make sure we get that information to you as quickly as possible, just because you need to plan for when those students who are taking alternate access can actually begin. Now, a couple things to consider. The test window opens December 1st. So if you're following along on a calendar, you'll notice that that's a Thursday. Not an ideal to start a test window, but that's okay. So Thursday, December 1st. The following Monday, there is no school. Winter break begins the 21st of December. So you've got approximately 2 full weeks to actually get a jump on this assessment. Winter break ends and students return on January 4th, which I believe is also a Thursday. MLK on the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is on the 16th of January, which is a Monday, of course. That same week, January 20th, is the end of the semester. So then the following Friday, the window closes on January 28th. So as you can see, there's a lot more going on in the second half of this window than there is in the first, although it's a pretty chopped up, broken up test window anyways. Keep in mind that if you need additional materials, there is we're going to tell you that we're going to need 3 days in order to get that material ordered, get it shipped here and back out to you. So if you suddenly find that you need something quickly, let us know. We'll see what we can do, but it's going to probably take, quick is 3 days. So, okay. Other things to keep in mind. Suppose you have a student who arrives and enrolls on December 20th, the day before winter break. Just like any process, when a student arrives, you need to determine whether or not they need to take the WIDA screener. So go through the home language survey. If that indicates that they need to have the WIDA screener, that must be given first. They must be identified as an English learner before we can even think about providing the access test to them. Now, it may be obvious. You may say, well, of course, they're arriving from a Central American country. They're brand new to the country. They don't speak any English. You still have to go through the same process. We do not want to ever test anyone who is not an English learner and has gone through that protocol. Also, the question comes up because we always have students who arrive towards the end of the window. When is it that we can, do we have to, if they arrive on the 26th of January, do we have to go through and test them for access? And the answer that I've consistently given over time is we will close that window, so to speak, on the 20th of January. So if a student arrives on the January 20th or after, then you do not have to give access. You still have to go through the same WIDA screener process, but you don't have to give access simply because that is quite, if you want to, if you've got the resources and the time to be able to do that, you certainly are welcome, but I'm not going to prohibit you from that. But again, if they arrive late in the window, just kind of thinking about what actually works for schools, that's what I wanted to give consideration to. Okay. Everyone who's proctoring the test needs to have professional development. This includes you as an access coordinator. Again, you may not be proctoring it, but you really need to know what it is that is taking place. Any ESL teachers, any language teachers, any support staff who are going through and actually proctoring the test need to go through the professional development. If you have not received a WIDA account, which is where the professional development is, please email us if you haven't got that, or anyone in your building who needs to have that professional development, anyone who needs access, let us know. We'll get that account set up for you. And then you go through the WIDA site, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, and get that professional development. There is a quiz. There are 10 questions, and you have to get 8 of the 10 questions correct. So ideally, it would be now through the rest of this month, through the opening of the window, that you would end up doing the professional development. But if you have other staff, for instance, that you need to bring on board who are going to proctor at some point, that's fine. They can go ahead and take that professional development as long as they get it done before they are asked to proctor. It's on the WIDA training site, as I said, and it takes approximately an hour. Okay. Once you log into the WIDA site, you can see in the upper left-hand corner or in the left-hand side, the wida.wisc.edu. That is also linked from this particular slide deck to the WIDA site. You get on their home page and it looks something like this. You've got, again, wida.wisc.edu. If you scroll down, you'll come to something that's called, it says looking for training, WIDA Secure Portal. As someone taking the professional development, you select that, and then there will be a login screen. Once you told us that you need an account, we will register you. You'll get an email from WIDA, and then that will give you your username and password. So logging in there, pretty clear after that, the process to take the professional development and the quiz. Okay, just an overall reminder of how Access for ELL assessment flows. Students can take either the listening or the reading first, but it has to be one of those two, both of those, before anything else happens. So for instance, since we've got a big chunk of time, 2 weeks, essentially before winter break, maybe you want to make sure that all your ELs have gone through the listening and reading portion. So it can be in either order, listening or reading or listening. And what that does then is it allows the software, the assessment, to determine what tier placement the student should be at for the second portion of the assessment, the last two domains, which are speaking and writing. So it takes approximately an hour. We also know that it can go faster. I think we've had somebody, most years everybody says, oh, 15, 20 minutes. Count on an hour, so don't schedule a student to finish the reading, for instance, and the listening, and then 15 minutes later start the speaking and writing. Just consider that an hour is a good buffer time. Once you have a tier, it will either be tier A, which is typically for those students who are newer to English, the English language, or tier BC, which are students who are a little bit more proficient, or a lot more proficient. Once you have the tier placement, then you can schedule or put students into groups for the speaking and the writing. Speaking of groups, I want to just let you know that listening and reading, those first two, those can be done with large groups. There's no distinction between students who are proficient, pretty proficient at the language, or those who are new to English. The tiered portions, the second portion, so speaking and writing domains, need to be considered a little differently. So the speaking, once you've got the tier placement, the speaking does not have to be separated into tier A and tier BC, but you need to consider that it's because of the technical capacity and what's needed, group size and connectivity, typically around 6, maybe 8. We've had some people who pushed it to 10. I don't want to have students drop off during the middle of the test simply because they aren't connected to the internet. So keep that in mind. Working with tech services, we know that there's good Wi-Fi coverage within the buildings, so that it doesn't necessarily matter exactly where you work with these student groups, but do consider that connectivity. Writing, however, is a little different. You do need to separate the students out into the two tiers. So students who are in writing tier A, taking that domain, that level, probably will take 30 to 45 minutes to complete the assessment. Tier BC, because of the level of the questions, typically take longer. They'll take 45 minutes to 60 minutes approximately. Now, you could theoretically give them the two tiers together, but what happens is tier A students typically finish, and then there's distraction for those students who are continuing to write the students in BC. So we really urge you to separate those two tiered portions for the writing domain. I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions so far. Okay, let's continue. All right, so again, access through the PD account. There is an argument to be made that if you have students who are new to the country who've never taken access, it would really be good for them to take this practice test, or to at least look at the items to see how it is. This will be linked on our website, and also send it to you. We can put it in the notes for today, where the practice assessment is located. There are questions for each one of the domains in that practice test. When you log into the AMS system, again, the link is in the right-hand side here. This is the welcoming screen, as welcoming as it gets. Make sure you sign in with your username and password. There is a change this year to the next page, which looks like this. So there's a landing page that's new. It tends to be a little bit easier to find things. So you can just click on the buttons and it will take you to the menu choices. Or if you are looking for everything that you've had in the past, you can also see that. It would simply be in the upper left-hand corner, DRC Insight, it'll say WIDA, and then it will have the menu option. So both will get you to the same place. And after this, it pretty much looks the same as it has in the past. So there's not a huge learning curve if you've done this before. Okay, we talked about the tier placement report, because after you do the listening and the reading domains, you need to get that report. So how do you get it? We will be placing a document, a how-to document on the website, as well as I'll be sharing a video just walking people through this placement report process. So how do you find that? After you log into AMS, you are going to choose something called the test management from the menu. It will be on that first page, but it will also be here on the My Applications window. It's at the bottom, test management. Once you've done that, you're going to manage test sessions. So that's the only choice of what you're going to be able to do in test management. And then you fill in the information in the drop downs. For instance, make sure that it's on Wisconsin Access for ELLs 2022-23 and your particular school. Once you've done that, click on Show Sessions. Now, remember that at high school, there's just one session, but it's for each grade, so it'd be grade specific. So for instance, here's an example of what you will see. East High School, generic grade 10, the grade band is 9 through 12. This is listening. And then over to the right, you'll see several buttons. You can do a lot of different things, including printing tickets, etc. But what I want to share right now is that view and print the tier report. By clicking on this button, you will get a report for all your students, a PDF for all your students, and it will tell you which tier they are in. So you'll be able to print that out and then make sure that you are scheduling those students in the appropriate sections for the speaking and the writing domains. Okay, now another thing that people are always concerned about is, how do I know who's finished the test? So there is a place to get a completion report. This is something that is pretty typically used. So instead of going to test management, we're going to go to the menu option of student management. Once in the student management section, you see the student status dashboard. Click on that because you want to know where things are at. What it shows then is over here on the left, student status dashboard. You select your site, obviously in Wisconsin, and it comes up with the name of your school. You should only have probably just the one option. Once you select that, it will create a series of graphs showing you where things are at. And because if you were to go in today and take a look at the status of each school, this is what they would look like. Nobody has started, nobody has completed anything. But after December 1st, you'll begin to see these colors changing. Green for those students who have completed, gray for those students who are in progress, red for those who have not started. So it gives you an overall sense of where you are at as a school, how many tests are completed, and this is how many domains. So if you have 100 ELs, this number would be 400 because each of them are expected to take the 4 domains. So this number will not match the number of ELs that you have. It will show you by grade level where everybody is at, and by domain, and then by the grade band. Now, obviously, this is an elementary version, but it will show you listening, reading, and it should be because there's only one grade band at high school, should be the same as the domain numbers. When you are on this page, if you were to scroll to the bottom, what you would find is a spreadsheet. And you can click download that spreadsheet, and then you can sort students however you want, by grade level, by domain, by completion status. So you'll be able to see who has yet to start, who is in progress, and who needs to who is finished. Now, that's a key part. We often come across the fact that a student, when they are finished, neglects to hit the submit button. And so they're done. They close the top of their Chromebooks and off they go. They're not finished. They must select that submit button. So as you go through and begin to start looking for who is finished, who is not, you may say, wait a minute, I thought that student was finished, and it says in progress. So you should have the student log back in to that particular assessment. They might have one question left. They might have to just simply select the submit. So that would be something that you need to keep track of. All right. Logging students in. Now, student Chromebooks are the way to go. So this will only be on Chromebooks, and it is not, I repeat, it is not found through ClassLink. Right? That still has not been a thing that's happened. So students will log out. If they're logged in as themselves, they log out of their Chromebook. And then once it's the welcome screen to log in, you'll see in the lower left-hand corner something called the app menu. It'll say apps. And here you'll find several things as far as assessment is concerned. You'll find on the top or somewhere in there, DRC Insight online assessments. They need to click that particular app. Now, based on a lot of different things, they may go directly to the login page for access, or they may be given a choice of options to how to log in and what to do. If that's the case, make sure they click on the WIDA button. So you see that example in the lower left-hand corner. That'll take them to the login page. You will have tickets for them. So the tickets will be available, and you need to get them that. They will use their username and password for whatever section they are on. Okay. Several miscellaneous things, and then we'll open it up for more questions about it, about access. Okay, hang on. Yes, thank you, Sarah. So there will, once you click on WIDA, you can go to Access for ELLs or WIDA Screener. Again, make sure they go to Access because that's the assessment that we're testing. One of the things that we've run into in the past is that students, when they try to log in, will get some kind of an error that says, see your test administrator. And typically what that is the Chrome OS, the operating system for their Chromebook, is not up to date. It is not the most recent version. Believe it or not, operating systems are constantly changing. And actually the latest version of Chrome OS is updated since we started school already. There's been a change, at least 2 changes since then. So in order to make this something that is remove this chance for an error, because if a Chromebook sits over the summer and is not opened, or if a student just continually opens and closes it but never restarts their machine, Tech Services has come up with a plan to make sure that the Chromebooks update themselves. So every Monday morning at 4:30 a.m., a message is sent out to all Chromebooks in the district that says, when you're opened up, when you start up this morning, regardless of whether a student hits the power button and restarts the whole machine or not, it will check for OS updates and any other updates as well. So Monday mornings, Chromebooks typically will be updating themselves. So all Chromebooks should have the most recent OS operating system update available. So we should not have many, if any, of those particular kinds of errors. We've also had in the past errors due to screen resolution settings. In other words, the students or another application that the students have been using has reset the resolution so that when they're doing access testing, maybe only 2 of the 4 multiple choice answers are visible, or you can only see 3 of them instead of 4. So Tech Services has also set this up so that the screen resolution resets itself every Monday morning. Now, as students work through the week, for instance, if they're testing on December 1st, which is a Thursday, it will have updated itself earlier in that week. But in the meantime, they may have had some kind of an app that has changed the setting. We'll get those keystrokes out to everyone, or just a reminder that there's simply 3 keys that you press simultaneously, and it will reset to the standard resolution settings. All right. Can students opt out? This is the only assessment that we have that students may not opt out. There are no choices about this. That's why we're very careful to make sure that it is only students who need to take access actually take it. If a student is on monitor, in other words, their DPI language level is a 5 or above, they should not be taking this test. If they do, that really throws some complexity into the situation as far as their standing with English language learner status. So, can students opt out? No. We do know that students are pretty difficult to force to take things. And so if you run into a situation where students are refusing, that is another thing. They can also, literally you can opt out by not being there. So we will keep track of that. Please keep track of who is refusing. Let us know. We'll keep track of that, but we also have to put that into the software at the end to say why students have not tested. We'll talk about students in special programs in just a moment in a little bit more detail, specifically Madison Promise, which I know there are some 9th and 10th graders in. But if students are in special programs and are not on site, they do need to take the assessment. This is something, again, that students, just because they are in a different location, if they're at Horizon High School, for instance, they still are our responsibility to test. Let's see, a reminder, during the access window, so December 1st through January 27th, students who are taking the alternate access also need to be taking the test. So it's the same overlapping time frame. This year, there is going to be a field test for the alternate access because they're trying to change the test to be a better assessment. And so that field test, we need to participate in. I've shared this with you in the past, but that will be February 14th through March 17th. Even though if you were to look on the state testing window or DPI website, you'll see that it goes through April 17th. We are not going to do that. We will provide about a month's worth of time. We know that in that time also, early March is the ACT. So, continuing to add more and more assessments over this is not a good plan. So if you have, I know you have students who are going to be taking the alternate access field test. Again, if we can front load that in mid to late February, that would be better. Okay, so Madison Promise students. Again, remember all English learner students are required to take this assessment. This can only be done in person. So no students from Madison Promise or any other offsite location can do this test virtually. So students who are enrolled in Madison Promise should be testing at their primary enrollment location. So at your school, if they are, that's their primary enrollment. So you need to, and I believe that the list that Sarah sent out regarding which students to test, what the roster is, there was a column that said that that these students are enrolled in Madison Promise, or they're enrolled at another site that you need to consider. So those students should be invited to participate by you. You need to set up, again, a date, a time, and a location of that test. Send that to the student and the family. Now, we've done that in the past. Last year, especially, we had quite a bit of that. We had many more students who were virtual than we did do this year. Should be a small group, but you need to make sure you do those invitations, provide those invitations anyways. If you are having a difficult time connecting with a family, Andrew Stendal is the Madison Promise guidance staff person. He can work with you to connect with the family and make sure that at least the lines of communication are open. Obviously, coming into test is something that the family makes a decision about, and we need to respect that. But again, there are no opt-outs. So just wondering if our friend Ben Kolosh is around. Ben, there you are. Good morning.
Here I am. Good morning.
I just wanted to touch base a little bit on the conversation about potential for additional proctors. So
Correct.
if you could just share out some of the things that we talked about yesterday, that would be great.
Yeah, so we generally get a question about will there be supplemental proctors to give to high school buildings? Generally, that has been our practice to provide that sort of support to a high school building. I think you can all see that it's getting more difficult. We have a shortage of teachers as well as a shortage of additional proctors. It is still our intent to give what time we can and prioritize high school buildings, because there are so many people there's so many ELs in the high school buildings. Generally, we have most of the proctors who were here and worked with high schools last year. Most of them are returning. However, Jen Kluterman is the one that is making sure each of those individual relationships is continuing all that. She's going to have some communication going out really soon. I also understand, it's not, those are generally supplemental things that we intend for, like, here you can run speaking sessions with this person. It's not going to be running your whole testing apparatus. I know that teacher time is pulled in 15 different directions today too. So I just want to give you some extra options to consider if your ESL BRT staff is not the end all be all of what you can use for proctoring or what you need for proctoring. Any teacher in your building can proctor this exam. All they need to do is be trained. Okay, so the same training that Tim has laid out for your ESL BRTs that they've already known about. Many are already aware of that. They just need to go through that training. It takes about an hour, take the quiz, pass that. Also, another option is if you have someone who's not a teacher on your staff, someone who's in more of a support role, like a BRS, an SEA, we don't want those people proctoring on their time on contract in that role, because that's a real gray area. We don't want to start pushing them into parts of their role that are not in their contract. However, we probably have a bunch of part-time people in our buildings that might want to continue after their contract hours. That is possible. We have budgets for teachers who are in their prep time to be paid to do this. So for instance, you have a science teacher who's not an ESL BRT, wouldn't normally be doing this. We have budgets that we can fund to fill that in. We're working on connecting the dots of exactly how that accounting happens, but we can do that. For staff members who are off their contract hours as a support staff, we also have a budget that can fill that in. Again, we're just working on the technical details of, do we work through your secretaries? What is the exact rate they would be getting? All those things. Jen Kluderman will have more information on that. But I just wanted to make sure that you are able to think about options that are maybe outside the box we've been living in for the last couple of years. If you have other questions about how to be creative with some of this staffing, let me know. We can take some that might be questions that might be good to the whole group if we have time, and if they're good for the whole group. Otherwise, I would be glad. This is an invitation for you to approach, and we can work through some of the other options you might have.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Much appreciated. And again, I appreciate everybody's flexibility. And we know going in that things are not the same as they have been prior to pandemic. We recognize that. We also recognize that people are pulled in many different directions. So looking for as many options as possible outside the box. So we'll continue the conversation if you have questions. Ryan, so will there be district communication templates? Yes. We will not send the letters to the families. We'll send them to you so that you can share with the families in the way that works best for you and your community. So those will also be translated letters. So very similar to what we had last year. What will change would be, I think, something about having to come into the building. We'll probably remove any language saying things like, this is only an in-person test. So you may be invited. We're just going to assume that our students are in our classrooms today. We'll have those probably, I'm thinking hopefully by the end of this week. I have to double check on where all that process is. So
Tim, I have a question.
Yes.
So regarding the ones they opt out, but what happens, for example, the kids who are on the list, technically speaking, that's enrolled, but they have never shown up. They're basically dropouts, but.
Right. So thanks for yes, we know that there are always, students who are no-shows. As long as they are enrolled in our schools, they have active enrollment in IC, they are our responsibility. So we just, obviously they're going to be a no-show. So what the option is at the end, when the window closes, we have to give reasons why students did not test. What we'll see is that there will be was absent for the entire window. And so that's what we'll have to use. And yes, this is an age-old issue that we have to deal with for all different kinds of testing. And until there's a better way, we still have to just say, yes, this is what we do as a school, and have to take it as someone that we wish they would show up, but we know they don't. So
yeah. I mean, they haven't come since the beginning of the semester, and parents said they're not going back to school. So right. So until we have to go by what is in IC. If they're actively enrolled, we have to test them. So thanks. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
It's Catalina. I have a question too. So
Yeah.
Has the testing window changed for the alternate testing? I saw something from February to April. It used to be during the same time.
Great question. It is during the same time. So there is an additional test this year for those students, only those students who have the alternate access. So it would be, what they're doing is they're field testing. So they're trying to re-envision what the test is going to look like for future years. But in order to do that, they have to try out the questions. And so that we are expected by the state to do this. Again, it's a much smaller population, but again, it's also a population that, takes longer typically on the tests, et cetera. So we will be meeting again as a group in January, towards the middle part of January, to wind up the regular access and alt access assessment windows, but then we'll have more details about that second alternate access field test window at that point.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep. All right, I'm going to finish up. I'll continue sharing the slides, and then we'll open up for more questions. So, all right. we're going to talk briefly about the Apple assessment, the optional winter screening, and ACT accommodations. So in the past and every year, we offer something called the Apple. It's a language proficiency test for those students who are learning to speak another language other than English. And so typically this is going to be for the world language students at levels 3 and up, as well as those students who are working on their seal of biliteracy. Very similar to Access. It is going to contain 4 domains. It's ticket driven, not on class links. So again, almost identical to the process. And I want to just make sure that you understand that it's almost an overlapping, it is an overlapping window. I have been working with the department chairs and will continue to do that. They know about this whole process. We've been through this before, and we are identifying those students and getting everyone ready for that assessment as well. So we've got 2 language assessments going on simultaneously. One is Access for those who are learning English. We have Apple for those who are learning another language. So based on if they're in German or French or Spanish, they'll be able to take that particular assessment. All right. Optional winter screening. If your school would like to do the optional screening for Achieve 3000 level set, it is available. Please click on this form. We'll put this link into the notes as well, and let us know that that's something that you want to do. This is not going to be something that is going to be by a class level. For instance, if one teacher says, I want my students to take this mid-year screening, I don't want that. It needs to be, we're going to do this as a school. So if our 9th graders in English are going to take it, then our 9th graders are going to take it, and that's what we're going to do. So please keep that in mind. There's also some rationale. So if you click on the second link, there's rationale why you would or why you would not want to do the screener. This data that's produced by the screener is going to be for your school only. It is not going to be something that is sucked into the data that is used to inform district graphs and charts, etc. This is going to be for you. So that might be something that you want to consider. It may be something that you just said, you know what, we're going to take a break, but I want you to know that that option is out there. If you are interested, please complete the form, the Google form that is here, but do so considering all the options, all the pros and cons for this. All right, finally, if you are involved with students with disabilities or English learners, again, one of the things that needs to be in this mix, you should be thinking about getting ready and uploading the request for ACT accommodations. So that involves the testing accommodations coordinator. Each one of you should have that. So there is the test coordinator at a school. Testing accommodations coordinator has access to the portion called TAA. It's there that you put in all the information, and that ACT says yes or no to these accommodations. The sooner you get going on that, the better off you're going to be. There is a January deadline. I'll get information out to everyone in the very near future about that deadline, but this should be something that's on the radar. And if you haven't already started, you need to start doing that. This is also the place where English learner supports are requested and placed into TAA, so that students who are English learners can have the best opportunities to do well on the ACT. So again, a reminder that this is for ACT. It is not for the pre-ACT secure test. So we're talking only your 11th graders who are going to be looking at this. We are going to spend a lot more time talking about ACT at our next meeting. Things will be rolling. I'll be getting out specifically information about the timeline and what actions need to be taken by who in your building regarding ACT in the near future. Hopefully, my expectation is that that will be to you either by the end of this week or the middle of next week at the latest. All right, so we're going to take a look at questions. If you have questions, remember you can contact any of us, myself, Sarah Wallner, Caroline Racine Gillis, who will be glad to help you with any data routines, etc. And so let's take some questions. I know that there have been a few. So, yes, yes. So, okay, advanced placement. Thank you, Sarah. Advanced placement accommodations are also at the same time. So if you're in a process of looking at your students for the ACT and getting those accommodations ready, it wouldn't be a bad thing to determine whether or not you need to do that upload for the College Board as well. So we'll get information out to you about that soon. So I am going to pause and let you have questions if you have them. So, what questions do you have? And I'm going to stop recording so then we can just dive into it and you can let loose. All right.